So I'm here with my dear friend, Lee Warren, and we are going to have a conversation today about what is Tantra and see where we go with this vast and ever-changing topic. So Lee is a death educator. Do you want to say anything more about yourself before we start?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And thanks. I'm excited about this conversation. I was just telling Sarah, I think I want to have this conversation with everybody in my life who practices Tantra. It's such a good prompt. My name is Lee Warren, and I am a death and Tantra educator. And that means a lot of different things depending on the month, the year, and the projects that I have going on, and those sort of unfold and spiral out what all of that means. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and Western North Carolina in the mountains. And Sarah and I know each other from our various and sundry erotic spaces that we inhabit. And this is the first time we're doing this, so it's very exciting to spin our hearts and minds and bodies out and see what emerges.
Yep, very exciting. I'm going to pause for a sec. Okay, here we go again. So, yeah, what is Tantra? And um yeah, I think I do you feel ready to start to just take a
Cool.
jump in and see where we go from
Yeah.
there. Great.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I have this conversation a lot, and it changes a lot. But I think at the moment, what I often say when I begin this conversation about what is Tantra is this idea that um, there are thousands of practitioners and lineages, and probably tens of thousands of different definitions of Tantra. And so there's not one of the things I love about Tantra is you can't really put it in a box. It's like the Tao, and much of the Tao and Tantra sort of emerged in similar ways, right? Through Hinduism, through Buddhism, and different places it emerged. Um, there are, yeah, so many different ways to express. But I think my favorite definition at the moment, or at least today, is it's a book of wisdom, particularly written for one's own journey and path through this life, that's hidden in the cave that's guarded by a dragon.
Oh my God. It's hidden in a cave that's guarded by a dragon. Huh.
Right, because the real truth of the matter is that every single, hero, heroine, adventure story, every fairy tale, everything we've heard, mythic storytellings throughout our lives is really about meeting all of these characters that play out. Snow White, the seven dwarves, the beast in the cave, the kingdom under a spell, the sleeping beauty, the witch in the woods, all of it is about the journey inward.
Hmm.
It's all about, recognizing that the world teaches us to find all of our answers outside of us, in facts and opinions and pundits and analysts and, the news and the preachers and the lineages and the traditions. And what Tantra tells us is, no, it's inside, right?
Hmm.
And very many of these sort of wisdom traditions tell us that it's inside, but it's really scary in there. It's really scary in there. And, like, how do we do it? How do we get, and then there's universes inside of here, right? We
Yeah.
think we want to go see the seven wonders of the world, and that's awesome. Outward adventure is amazing. But there's 1,000 times that much adventure internally. And,
Hmm.
the thing that Tantra does is it gives us a bit of a map, depending on how we come at it, gives us a bit of a map for how to live that quest to find the book of wisdom in the cave guarded by the dragon.
Hmm. Yeah, I love the guarded by the dragon part because, well, I love all of it. That was so beautiful. That's like really just so lands because it reminds me of like when I was in college and I decided I wasn't Catholic anymore. And I was on this backpacking trip and I just decided I was going to invent my own religion while I was on this trip. And so I just started writing like the principles, that I thought should be in my religion. So it was like I was just inventing, like, kind of starting to write my own like guide for like, these are the things, these are the guiding principles. Um, but I definitely didn't have the hidden in a cave and the guarded by a dragon part. And I think the guarded by a dragon part really delights me today because Tantra, or one thing that delights me about Tantra is the antinomian. This is a Georg Feuerstein term that he used to describe Tantra. How do you even I need to Google that word, antinomian, but it means like, I think it just means like opposite of normal, basically, like something that's like against the trend. And the dragon brings that up for me of like where it's like there you're gonna have to fight or struggle or like press against, like it's not just sitting there waiting to be discovered. Like there has to be some sort of a tension in the system or a dance or a conflict, in order to maybe kill this thing or charm this thing or work with it somehow and breathe its fire. Yeah, maybe that's just also the phase of life I'm at right now, which is I kind of there is sort of this attraction to that, like the drama of that. Um,
I think the dragon is always the same, and we approach it at, different decades of our lives, different eras and phases of our life. We approach it differently, and the dragon is us. Really, it's facing our mortality.
mm,
It's facing our um, suffering. It's facing our uh, you know, limitations, fears, all the sort of phantom illusions that we have, right? If we scratch the surface of any tradition, any lineage, any, spiritual path, it'll say death is an illusion. It's all an
mm,
illusion. Fear is an illusion, right? The dragon is an illusion. But we come here and we incarnate, and we definitely do not experience this as an illusion. That is not our experience.
right.
It's like really, really real. And it is. And the dragon is us, right? To be like, when I think about Tantra, it's like the art of being in my what I've been given, the art of incarnation, I think of, because it's not that we're born and suddenly we're incarnated. Some of us stay dissociated for the entirety of our lives.
Hmm.
Oh, my kitty, goodness gracious. She has a lot to say about this topic right now.
Oh,
Um,
we weren't even hearing her. Was
oh
she
my gosh,
chiming
she
in
was
back there?
crying so loud. She's a lot to say.
Oh,
She's a little shaman kitty. But yeah,
oh.
it's really hard to get here and be here because there are dark caves and dragons within us, and then we project that and we create all of this trauma drama outside of us, and then we get all wound up and distracted by that. So that's another of my favorite definitions of tantra, is like learning to get here.
Hmm. Hmm. Learning to go. You two are so cute right now. Oh my God. I love it. You both like kind of looked at the camera with like the same look. That's adorable.
Yeah, this one's a
Yeah, it
little
was a
shaman.
very good punctuation. You're like learning to get here. You both like,
Yeah, she likes a little shamanic. She's not happy until she has some shamanic thing going on. This one. She came to the right family, that's for sure.
Does she like to have like near death experiences or something
She,
like that?
she likes medicine
Uh-huh.
experiences. She likes dream time. She's a little sorceress.
Huh.
Just her little personality. Yeah.
Why she's your buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Y'all are sweet. Well, I'm trying to feel in if I have anything to add to this. Oh, I know. I have a question, another question for you, I think, which is, hmm, I don't want to phrase this. Like, would you describe is Tantra your personal spiritual path?
Yes, I would say Tantra is as close as it comes to me for me to define a personal spiritual path. Yes, and it's so wide reaching and it has me stretch
Hmm.
and expand to touch it, which is the thing that I need the most because what I grew up with, is this idea. I grew up in the Catholic system, and it's the sins of the flesh, right? There's no
Hmm.
self pleasure, there's celibate priests, there's glorifying this death cult, but not in a good way. And you go to hell if you misbehave. And so there's all this contraction, right? And then I grew up in this family where I had I would call it a very sensual family, sort of an Italian ancestry where there's my Italian matriarch grandmother loved to swear and eat and drink and befriend and berate people and all of the drama of the sort of Italian culture. And so there was this like split. I mean, like for many of us, and I've explored all mannerisms of materialism and spiritualism. And I think that Tantra I love Tantra in again that way that the Taoism is similar, which is there's some principles, and these principles, it doesn't matter if you like them or not, they exist. And it's just kind of fun to be like, okay, well, how do I work that particular principle in my
Hmm.
life? And I'll sort of give an example. I mean, one of the things that is a through line in Tantra for me is the idea of eroticism, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's emerging from the genitals or from the arousal hormonal system. It's much bigger than that. It's like the creative life force tension with form and formlessness, and that is an endlessly fascinating concept for me. What does it mean? What is the sensuality of aliveness, right? So Tantra is like the ocean and the wave. And then I think what I would say is, as my spiritual practice is learning to be out there on the surfboard and learn from it. You
Hmm.
talk to surfers and they're like, I just have to surrender.
Hmm.
Like I develop my muscle and my skill and my knowledge and then just like let it all go. And I think
Hmm.
that's what, Tantra sort of provides for me. It's like some amount of framework, some amount of, principles and understanding. And then like, how do I surf all that?
Yeah. What what principle, maybe one or two or however many, have felt the most active for you, like in the past, like couple of days, for example? Like, is there some principle that you feel like has been coming through for you or has been really alive that feels very tantric, that's been like bubbling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the principle that I've been working with, I would say for months and maybe years, and probably will be for many years, is the principle of the intermarriage.
Mm.
And it's this idea of yeah, we've been touching on it, which is the materialism versus the spiritualism of like matter. We are both. We have this whole matter, this matrix, this physical world, which we need to navigate and figure out and live in. And get good at and make money and do all the things we need to do. And then we also are have a soul essence or a divinity or a consciousness, a part that's not part of matter, really. That animates the matter, right? We all have seen dead things where the form is there, but the being is not there. So, like, what is that animating force? Um, and this is a constant. If it's not conscious, then in most people it's unconscious. This is what is this? What is this whole thing that's unfolding and happening here? What is this? What is this vehicle that I embody? And what is and certainly when there's a death in our lives, we get to like be plunged really into those questions. um, and then we get this life, so we get given this life, and then we get to do something with this life, right?
Right.
um, and we get to have an intimacy, we get to choose where to put our attention, we get to make all kinds of decisions about what happens with this combination of spirit and matter. And often in the at least in the Western cultures, we are driven by productivity and success and external measures of success. And I think what the East, but being exposed to the East over the last number of decades has done for us, or last number of centuries, is said, like, it doesn't really matter. What you need to cultivate is the inner experience. What you need to be guided by is the spirit, is the soul. Like, this is doesn't really, everything that happens externally is as a result of what we're putting our attention on internally, right? So then there becomes, in Tantra, there's, especially for Westerners, where we can start to be like, oh, these are not separate things. There's spirit and there's matter, and one infuses the other, and one informs the other. And so this is, the high art of incarnation. And my experience is that the more I really work with an embodiment practice, the more it's called involution. There's evolution. We're going to evolve ourselves in whatever ways, spiritually or physically, that we want to evolve ourselves. But involution is the idea of spirit wants to be in matter. It wants to sort
Mm.
of descend in a way into matter. And embodiment practices, trauma practices, erotic practices help me get into my body where I can start to experience that inner marriage. This is what the mystics talk about, right? Whether it's through alchemy, whether it's through the yin yang process, like the Tao would have, whether it's through more of the Jungian systems of the marriage of the anima and the animus, the masculine, feminine. But it's this idea that these seeming opposites come together in union. And there's lifetimes of exploration of that.
Mm.
And so many ways to think about that and come at that and learn from that principle.
Mhm. I'm so noticing. It feels so good to just like ride those ideas with you, like as you're describing these things, I can feel myself sort of just following along on where you're going. And I'm just like, yes, yes. It feels really affirming and also expansive. I feel myself going into these like, yeah, like going into maybe more of that formless and that theoretical, like the ideas that you're talking about are so like yummy to me. And I'm noticing how it just feels good to sort of like, like rest into them with you. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about you? What kind of tantric practice or principle is turning you on right now?
Well, I think the thing that I feel the most excited to share about is maybe kind of an example of what you were just sharing about. Well, yeah, I don't know if it's the intermarriage, but it is this more like just awareness of subtle energy. So I think the principle that feels the most maybe exemplified in this story is that the involution that you just mentioned, like of spirit wanting to come land in our bodies and be here. Um, so I'm working on this Forest Fairy training school and Forest Fairy festival, and this is the biggest like professional thing I've done really since I owned my coffee company, I think. Like, I've been doing like all these little projects here and there, but like this is like something big that I'm like, I really want to put all my eggs in this basket this year. Um, yeah, and it feels good to do that. And over the last like several days, I've been feeling wobbly about it. Like, is this too ambitious? Is this too much? Like, just feeling spinny about like whether or not, um, I don't know, it's gonna work the way it's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen, but like, I don't know, just like there's been several people who were going to support me and help me that then got back to me and they're like, actually, I can't come. Like two people live in Canada and they decided not to come because of the political situation and just all kinds of little things like that. Not little things, but like, and like different people had different reasons. Anyway, it sent me into a little bit of a tailspin and over the past couple days, as I've been just like watching how those feelings are coming up in me, um, last night I was over at a partner's house and there were other people there, and we were all like trying to kind of chat. And I just noticed like I couldn't really engage. I felt like I was sort of on drugs or something, even though I wasn't. And I was like, I think it's because I'm still just like literally sort of spinning with this idea, like these feelings of destabilization around this big professional project I have. And I just, instead of kind of trying to override it or, shoo it away or change it in any way, I was just like, okay, like this is what's here. And I started leaning into it and just like listening and letting my body have the experience of sort of this like floatiness and just got super curious about like how it felt to be inside that particular emotional or energetic expression. Um, yeah, it was kind of like being in an altered state. I mean, that's already how I started describing it to myself. Um, and as the evening progressed and we went to bed, it's sort of like I grounded myself. I got some touch and cuddles, and that helped, and drank some water. It wasn't anything acute, but there was something interesting about watching the way it affected me somatically that felt more subtle than I think I slowed it way down and didn't like let it react or let myself react to it. I just like went into it. Um, and yeah, and when I was sharing with my partner, I think it was this morning, then we were talking about it, and he was saying how he experiences our connection that I help him become more aware of his subtle emotions. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, I think that's what I just experienced yesterday when, I was kind of in that spinny state and was just really slowing it down and noticing what was happening. Um, so there's just something so yummy about the subtlety. Like I think that's a yogic phrase or sentence too around like fall in love with the subtle. And I think it really applies to Tantra and also to this principle that you've just named of like because I feel there's like a deliciousness that exists in my body when I'm attentive to these really subtle states that otherwise I might miss. That it's like this positive feedback loop or something that like, oh, I'm listening, I'm noticing that level of subtlety, and then my body wants to know more. Like, tell me more. Like, what's next? Where are we going next? Like let's stay with this adventure. So that's what comes up for me. a recent little vignette of experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's another really potent and relevant definition of Tantra is the study of subtle energies. And so many more neo-tantra traditions are exploring that between two people. So
Hmm.
using eroticism, using the chakra system, using the kundalini,
Right.
using arousal, using, and not pleasure for pleasure's sake, but really pleasure for cultivating a relationship to the divine within and without. Those are
Hmm.
all awesome, awesome pathways. Um, and the study of subtle energies, you often people Western world, especially Europeans or Americans, usually enter the tantric door through learning how to move some of their arousal energy, sexual energy, sensual energy. But really, when you take the study of subtle energy, you can take it to sort of any tradition, right? You can take it into the kink
Hmm.
realm, which is like, I'm going to exactly watch what's happening to that person's body so that I know how to respond to it, whether
Hmm.
I'm in a dominant role or whether I'm in a submissive role, and I'm tracking everything that's going on in my body. It can also be public speaking. It could pick anything. It could be cooking. It could be tennis. It could be, it could be anything. It could be, the art of parenting in a way, right? What's happening in the subtle system of my child and in myself as we interact in a conflict or as we interact in a joyful moment, right? But I think this is where it takes bucking the trends of, um, not noticing how one's feeling until, there's like it hits you in the face, right? It really is the slowing down, having some emotional literacy for sure, but more importantly, sort of body sensation literacy. And
Hmm.
that, we just jack ourselves up on coffee in the morning and downers at night, and like we're not paying attention. We're not really paying attention to what's happening for us. So the journey, that's where the journey to the cave with the dragon is, which is like, if we're going to actually track our subtle energies, we actually have to inhabit what we've been given. And that is some of the most terrifying things people will ever encounter.
Hmm. Yeah, because we spend so much time numbing and escaping and buffering and
Right. And
yeah.
partly because we haven't learned to integrate difficult experiences. And so they get stored in the body because the body's brilliant. The body's like, well, we're here. We're here to live this existence and we can't process this right now. So we're going to hold on to it when you're resourced enough to process it. And, in order to get in the system, we need to get literate about trauma and emotions and all of that stuff that many of us have avoided.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your situation, you had you sort of had a situation where you couldn't, where the body was slowing you down and maybe introducing some freeze patterns into your system because it didn't know how to fully integrate. And then you
Hmm.
were able to get regulated externally, internally, and you're working through that, in an authentic way. I mean, that's the gift of retrieving the book of wisdom from the cave and the dragon, is that, it's not just because it's a nice fairy tale. It's like, no, the immense satisfaction and even access to bliss and ecstasy of being in sync and in tune with our own authentic experience, being guided by our own soul, self, essence, um, is some of the best medicine going.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Oh my God, that's so well said. Yeah, the bliss of being in tune with our own, what did you say? Our own energy, our own medicine,
Own soul or
our own
self or
soul. Yeah,
essence.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Mm.
where the action's at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happily ever after. Happily ever after is, can I be in this moment and be fully in tune with my experience,
Hmm.
fully available to myself, fully erotically alive, no matter what's happening out here. That's nirvana.
Hmm.
That's Tantra.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter if you're like in a graveyard standing on a dead body or I mean to use these like wild tantric, images. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Right. I mean, that's the tantric path, in many ways can be originated from that, working with death, which is why it's such a blend for me in my death education, because the bliss that comes from contemplating death. I mean, people shy away, avoid, deny, have all this illiteracy with death. And I'm like, you don't understand. The actual contemplation of our mortality is the doorway to the most ecstatic experiences.
Mm.
Like, y'all are missing the good stuff.
Do you want to share a little bit more about your upcoming course?
Yeah, I'm doing a 3-part course in April called The Ecstasy of Impermanence. And, I have taught about death for years and years and taught about many things, community and other things. And like, I'm just at the point in my life and my work where I'm like, I have nothing to say that's not going to be said better by your own body.
Mm.
Like, and the ecstasy of impermanence is just sort of like us coming together and me really holding a space for really gentle micro movements that anybody can do into the pleasure wave process, the fluid truth and movement in the body, just get people in their bodies, and then to start to ask these questions about impermanence and mortality, which touches into the bliss of existence.
Mm.
So we do this in 3 parts, where we do sort of a movement piece, we do a contemplation piece where we journal or do art, and then we come together as a community and talk about it. And this will take people much further in their own process of death contemplation than a lecture of mine could ever do. It is going to the source. And really, it's the transmission that I have to bring people, and just even being in conversation with me, they get the transmission, which you're probably getting now, which is impermanence is the key to
Mhm.
ecstasy.
Mm.
There's no way we can leave that out. And it is the quickest way to an ecstatic state, is to recognize our impermanence.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful. Yeah. I feel it. I feel the transmission. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And
Yeah,
I
it's such a gift.
totally share that, like, that felt sense of how, yeah, working with death or just bringing it into the practice, how it really does totally transform it brings so much ecstasy. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. And the contemplation of death, that we will die, that it may be today, it may be in decades, but the point is, it helps us surrender to the mystery of our own existence well before it actually confronts us for the final exit. And surrendering fully to the river of life is where all of the good stuff is.
Mm.
It's where everything good happens.
Mm.
And then this other idea of pleasure, using pleasure as our guide, because Tantra is learning to trust the pleasure of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Inviting ourselves to, yes, since I will die one day, how does the full yes of my existence guide me in every moment? What do I want to be doing?
Hmm.
Not this idea of like, I have a year to live and now I'm going to think about it. No, no, like right now, like I may not have more than this moment. What do I want to be doing in it this
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It reminds me of the kink scene I did with Lauren and Adam once, where Lauren was killing me. And I how like so much pleasure in that scene, just sheer joy and ecstasy and this sense of like like visceral expansiveness that I just, yeah, it really touched something in me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, this is a very radical concept, but I'm starting to play with it with people more and more, which is death as lover.
Mm, hmm
Death is the consort of life. Death is the lover of life. Death is the partner of life. There's not the enemy.
hmm
It is they're in an embrace.
hmm Yeah. Oh, I'll have to find this piece that I wrote once about death as a entity. Um, yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while. And yeah, it is a, I think I wrote it as a consort, as death and money. Anyway, they were characters that like lived in a tree. Anyway, I'll see if I can find it. It was much just bringing it up from the depths.
What about you? Do you want to talk about your upcoming?
Sure, I would love to. And I also, just before we move, I just want to really revel in the magnificence of the title, The Ecstasy of Impermanence. It's just, that's so fucking brilliant. I just love it so much. It's so you, and it's so like, it just feels like it so beautifully encapsulates like what you're going to be guiding people into. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty spot on. It's really pretty spot on. And then I was able to create these incredible images using this AI bot around, and it just nailed it around like these just dissolving, and
Mm,
that's part of the practice when we get into this somatic place and start to feel the field around us and start to feel us and the field and then the field within us, and there is no difference, and we start to be able to dissolve into the field,
mm,
and like these images like just express this dissolution, like we start to disappear, and
mm,
that's it. That's the place of deep, deep, deep surrender.
mm, mm. Well, I don't think I've seen these images yet, so I'm sure we'll link to it
Yeah,
with this video, and hopefully, yeah, I'll get to
yeah,
see them, and so will everybody else. Yeah. The thing that I'm feeling the most that resonates the most with what you're sharing, that feels like just relevant with to the whole thread that we're on. And one of the things that I'm most excited about Forest Fairy Training School, specifically this coaching 6 month coaching program that's forming, um, is that I'm so aware that each time we gather, it's going to be a once a week call on Tuesdays, and I've done a few kind of sample calls and recorded them and put them on YouTube. And I love these calls so much because like there's definitely skills that we're working on and leaning into. And the skills are we're finding the learning edge based on like what's coming up in the moment in the field with the that specific group of humans. And it's so beautiful the way it just emerges. And when I first started working in this way, I felt like I had to have some sort of agenda or plan. And the more I've done it, the more I realize like I really don't. I mean, I need to have, my skills and training and wisdom and the things that I'm bringing, tools that I'm bringing. But more powerful than that is like creating a group field with the people who show up, and then weaving together this unique um, exploration that shows up. And, this last call that we just did was like, I just had goosebumps when we got off the call. I think all of us were just sort of like, whoa, like what just happened there? And I really love that. I know this might sound very vague for people who are listening, but it's so, it's so exciting for me, like the not having a plan and just like, but trusting this deep transformational learning that comes through just weaving this field together. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I love that. And I think that just feeds right into these definitions of Tantra we've been talking about, which is it's the river of life. And the more we let go of our agendas and our presuppositions and our stories and our control, the more the river of life is like excited and meets us.
Yeah.
And it is vague because life is completely undetermined in every next
Hmm.
moment.
Yeah.
And if we can trust enough to let go, then magic happens.
Hmm.
So it's very
Totally.
tantric what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like it. And it's like, it's thrilling. And I think as I'm kind of just reflecting on this, it does feel like the group intention is important. And, for this group that I'm pulling together, the group intention is around transformation and learning. Like, I think everyone who has signed up so far, like, everyone kind of wants their lives to be unrecognizable by the end of it, wants their lives to be in some different place. And is curious about that. And so am I. And so I'm like, yeah, let's get on this ride and see where we go. What through harnessing like these tools of deep connection and belonging and leaning into areas of strategic discomfort, shadow work or whatever it is that feels relevant. So, or that bubbles up in the moment. So,
Yeah, intention is, another tantric term is the tapas and the spanda, right? And
hmm.
it's like the framework, the riverbank that holds like where are we going, what are we doing, and then just enough of that to let the river, the spanda flow free. Because
Yeah,
that's where the yummy, that's where the shakti, that's where the feminine principle of aliveness comes through.
yeah, deep
Beautiful.
flow. Yeah.
Yeah, very
Hmm.
good. Well,
Wow.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else before we wrap up that feels
This,
juicy?
yeah, this feels like a good place to
Okay.
stop.
All right. Thank you, dear. So glad we got to
Hmm.
do this. Till
Hmm.
next time.
Till next time.
Yeah.